guys, I am Dr. T and today's topic is a little different. This is more for those of you that are interested in being a vet or interested in the industry itself rather than from a pet owner's perspective, although hopefully there'll be something for everybody, and as usual everybody is welcome. I just wanted to do a short video on the 5 best and the 5 worst things about being a vet, so let's dive right in. We'll start with the worst aspects. Number 1, finances. Discussing finances with owners is probably the single worst thing about my job if I had to pick. Honestly, I hate it. Part of the reason is that most people have no frame of reference when it comes to the costs of healthcare, and there'll probably be another video on this, but the fact is that good quality medical care does cost money. Medicare here in Australia or the NHS in the UK, for example, means that healthcare for people is so heavily subsidised, and most people have no idea how much it actually costs to have radiographs done, to have blood tests at the lab or a CT scan or things like that. So vet bills come as a shock to many people. We are, believe it or not, extremely reasonably priced compared to the cost of human healthcare. We're often able to provide a quicker, more efficient service, and there's no disrespect to those of you in the medical profession. You guys are absolute heroes, and you see many, many more patients than we do that talk an awful lot more for the most part. But for example, when was the last time that you got blood results within an hour of having the bloods drawn? How long did it take you to have the results of your radiographs discussed with you the last time you had to have that done? I would bet it took longer than a couple of hours. And how long did you have to wait to have your hip replacement surgery? I bet it was longer than a couple of weeks. So we have a saying in veterinary medicine that owning a pet is a privilege, not a right. And if you cannot afford veterinary care for your animal, in reality, you probably shouldn't own one. And this especially goes for designer breed puppies that cost thousands of dollars, that people then can't afford to vaccinate and protect them from parvovirus, or that have so many health problems that they spend their whole life at the vet surgery. Clients that promise to pay and never do are the reason that most vet surgeries are unable to give you credit when you need it. We want so badly to help, but we've been bitten and burned so many times that we're not able to do it anymore. Would you go to Coles and tell them that you'd forgotten your wallet, but then you take your shopping home and you'll come back later? Would you go to a hairdresser and say, I'm so sorry, I don't get paid till next Tuesday, but I'll pay you then? Would you go to the car mechanic and ask him to fix your car for free because he loves tinkering with cars? No. Number 2, owners that tell you you're terrible at what you do, or callous, or heartless, or cruel, or uncaring. This happens on really quite a regular basis. For some owners, it doesn't matter what we do, we weren't quick enough, we weren't smart enough, we weren't cheap enough. And this particularly hurts us because we go into veterinary medicine for passion and not for profit, despite what many people think we don't earn a lot of money. For example, in Australia, the average salary for a vet is around about $73,000. I'm not saying that that's not a good wage compared to some, but for the hours and the training that we do, this really is not a lot. And I will do a post on this probably more specifically another time. But we do this job for the love of it and for the love of your pets. It is hard. Animals can't talk. They can't tell us where it hurts or how they are feeling. They can't tell us that the medications we are giving aren't working. So we have to be intuitive. We have to be careful, thorough, smart, focused, and many other things in order to be able to find what is wrong and determine how best to be able to fix it. We go through many years of training before and after we are on the job. As a general rule, we are type A personalities, which means we are driven, hardworking, determined to succeed almost at any cost. We have a tendency towards perfectionism and we work long hours, often studying and looking things up after we get home from a 10 to 14 hour day. We worry about our patients. We lose sleep over things that we might have done or not done, or things we feel we may have done better. Owners that don't appreciate all of the effort and time that we go to, or that tell us that we work for money alone, is really so disheartening, and it stays with us for a really long time. Number 3, the hours and demands of the job. This kind of links with what I was saying before. We work very long hours under lots of pressure, and this is due to the sheer volume of work that many clinics will experience. The physical hours required, the emotional demands of you, leaping from a euthanasia one moment to a young puppy vaccine the next, often with no time to process your emotions. The need to constantly project a happy face to clients in the consult room can honestly be exhausting. And if you add to that the lack of sleep if you're on call, or you've got a patient in a hospital that you're worried about, or, you know, the lack of ability to spend all the time that you'd like with your family, the career can be a very difficult choice. Number 4. Some of the problem with veterinary medicine can be that there are some clinics that are poorly managed and do not look after their staff. Now, this is either not respecting their needs as professionals, ignoring mental health problems, working hours that are expected of you, or lack of any boundaries for home or work-life balance, sometimes even workplace bullying and a lot of other things. I'm not going to go into too many details, and there are some clinics that are absolutely amazing at looking after their staff, but there is a proportion of the industry that does place profit over their staff. Although please note, some of the reason for this is that veterinary clinics in reality really do not make much profit when you compare to regular businesses. In some ways, they're a really poor investment. I have worked in many different clinics in my time as a vet, as I worked in both the UK and Australia as a locum relief vet. Some places can be very challenging to work in and can cause you great distress. If you are a vet or a nurse working in one of these clinics, there are better places out there and you do not have to suffer through it. Find a new place where your amazing skills are valued. Number 5. The last thing I will mention is one of the hardest bits about veterinary medicine. I'll explain this a little bit later, but whilst euthanasia itself is a privilege if performed at the right time, animals that owners request to be put to sleep needlessly, for example, some owners are moving house and don't want to take the dog, or potentially behavioural issues that they don't want to spend the time or money to train them to see if they're able to work on it, or they have a new baby and they don't trust the cat or the dog, things like that. Now, I'm not saying that there is never a reason to put a cat or a dog to sleep for behavioural reasons, because that is absolutely not true, and sometimes it is definitely required. But often people will take the easy route out rather than have to spend the time working on the training. Sometimes we're able to persuade them to surrender the animal so we can try and find them a new home. But can you imagine if every vet clinic did this in combination with the animals that are sent to rescue shelters all over the country and the world? There'd be no space left anywhere. On that note, while I've got you, adopt, don't shop. There are so many animals that need homes in shelters. You really don't have to spend thousands of dollars for a purebred or a purebred mixed breed, which, by the way, is not a thing. On the flip side of this are the owners that hang on and hang on and hang on. Sometimes people that mean really, really well can be the hardest to deal with, because you can tell an animal is suffering and you have the means to end that suffering, but they aren't able to make that decision. Even though I'm literally trained to be able to make that assessment, it's my job to know this. And above all, my priority is always going to be the animal's welfare. Not whether or not you think it's the animal's time, although there are certainly criteria involved in making this sort of decision where the owners or carers will 100% know better than the vet will. Sometimes I can look at an animal and I can see "please help me" written across their face, and those times absolutely break my heart when the owners aren't able to see or listen. And there can be many reasons for that. It can be socioeconomic, it can be family situations, all kinds of things, but these cases are often the hardest ones for me. And yes, we do have limited powers to forcibly do these things, but I do not know of a vet that would readily take that course of action unless it was absolutely necessary. The reasons for this are kind of complicated. Firstly, it often ruins the rapport and breaks that relationship that you spent time making with that client completely. It often means that the next time the client won't take the animal into the vet at all, and the animal endures ongoing suffering. And it means usually that your practice gets badmouthed online by people who do not understand both sides of the story, when all you're trying to do is help the animal and put their best interests at heart. So I hope that some of these things have given you guys a bit of an insight into why veterinary professionals can sometimes struggle. I know my husband puts up with an absent wife, or a very tired wife, or a very grumpy wife on a lot of occasions. So learning to manage your time effectively and protect your mental health is a skill. But again, there'll be more on this another time. Now for the positives. Number 1, having such excellent people around me. A good team is hard to find in any job, but the nurses and vets and clinic staff that I work with are absolutely bloody amazing. Having a supportive team is so important in this industry, because there are really tough days and nights. And finding a team that suits you and works hard as a team and supports you, and that you can have a laugh or a cry with when things are really hard is absolutely invaluable. Number 2, getting to help animals and clients. Now this may seem obvious, but it can be some of the most rewarding aspects of the job. When you can find what is wrong with an animal and hopefully fix it, and you can build that rapport with clients so that they trust you to do what is right by them, what is right for their pet. That is always the aim. The satisfaction that I get from being able to send a client out the door knowing that their pet is being taken care of by people that only want the best for them is lovely. And I want my pet owners to trust me and know that my focus is their baby, and we will try our hardest to get them through whatever ailment they're suffering from. We will work with them as much as we can balance treatment needs and budget and all that sort of thing. We will do so. And I want them to know when the time comes to say goodbye that I'll be right there with them, and we'll make these decisions together. And when all these things happen, when a client trusts you, when the pet learns to tolerate you, as vets, we often don't manage to get the level of trust from pets often, sadly. It gets you through these times when perhaps it's not the case. Number 3, being a vet is a very interesting career. It is always changing and moving forward. There are more things being discovered, more treatments being trialed, more physiology and biology to learn about all the time. There are so many aspects of veterinary medicine, most of which have absolutely nothing to do with clinic work for your pets. For example, there are vets that work solely in slaughterhouses to ensure the welfare of your dinner at the end of their lives, assuming that you eat meat, of course. There are vets involved in public health and disease control. Obviously, this is quite topical currently. There are vets involved in laboratory work, doing welfare assessments on animals that are involved in medical research and all of that sort of thing. There are vets involved in teaching, in training, in research, and in all sorts of things like that. We are encouraged, in fact, it is compulsory, to engage in ongoing learning throughout our career, and we have to do so many hours per year of training to keep our knowledge up to date. It's not really a career for those who are not avid learners and who don't enjoy it, but for those of you who are, it will keep you interested, impassioned, and keen for the rest of your working life and likely beyond. It does help if you're a bit of a geek, and most of us are. Number 4. This is going to sound like an odd one to those that aren't in the industry, but one of the biggest privileges in veterinary medicine is having the ability to end an animal's suffering in the right set of circumstances, obviously. Now, watching owners say goodbye or losing a patient that you've worked really hard to try and save is, of course, emotionally very challenging. But when you've reached the end of the treatment road, when the animal is in chronic pain and suffering, and when you can no longer help them or ease their distress, then euthanasia is a dignified and painless option. I often have owners say to me, "My goodness, that was a peaceful end," or "I wish we could have done that for my father," or many variations on that theme. If you've never been through it, it is difficult to imagine it being a satisfying or almost positive experience in some ways. But in all honesty, a euthanasia that is done for the right reasons at the right time and where everything goes to plan is probably the single most rewarding thing that I can do as a vet. I consider it a great honor and a privilege to have the ability to perform this great service for people's family members. And if the time ever comes that I don't shed a tear or two at the end, whether this is in private at home, afterwards, or with a client at the time, as sometimes happens, I'll know that it is time for me to hang up my stethoscope and find another career. Number 5, getting to do something that I am so passionate about and love doing is the biggest blessing in the world. I absolutely love my job, despite all of the hard times and things we've listed. And this doesn't mean that there aren't days that I question my decision, but it does mean that every day that I have to get up and go to work, I can honestly say that there is nothing I would rather do to put food on my table. And I cannot count the ways that I'm grateful for my career and the mentors and family support that has got me where I am. I think the takeaway from this is that every job will have its hard days or nights if you're like me and work in a 24-hour emergency clinic. I do genuinely believe that I have the best job in the whole world, despite all of its challenges. And please note, just because I largely love my job, it doesn't mean that I should do it for free. Again, we will come to that in another video. I work bloody hard. but the good days balance out the bad, and the 17-hour shifts are balanced out by the day that I get to watch that waggy tail walk out of the clinic instead of the collapsed dog that was rushed in his owner's arms. We do an amazing job, and we do work bloody hard in this industry, and that goes for vets, nurses, receptionists, kennel hands, vet students, and all of the other veterinary support staff that work at the clinic. A lot of it will go on behind closed doors, and most people will never know how hard their vet clinic works for them. Your furry little munchkins are the reason that we keep going, even when it seems difficult. As usual, guys, leave any comments below. I'd love to know what you'd like to see on the channel. Keep your fur baby safe. Until next time, and ciao for now.